What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Splash City Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hartman. This is our very first episode. Very excited to have you here along for this journey where we will be talking hoops, nonstop hoops, everything from high school to AAU and recruiting, Big Ten, Minnesota Golden Gophers, Timberwolves, and the NBA. Why the name Splash City? Well, of course, it's an ode to great shooters and great shooting in the game of basketball, as well as a nod to the land of 10,000 lakes where this podcast will be taking place. So excited to bring you on this journey. I have been a basketball junkie my entire life. Some of my earliest memories are watching college basketball, specifically those early 90s Duke teams. Actually, my fandom of Duke basketball started with a 30-point lashing against the UNLV Runnin' Rebels in the 1990 college basketball championship game. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize everyone hated Duke, so now I just own it. But I'm also a huge fan of every kind of basketball, every level of basketball, and just excited to talk about it. Right now, it's a summer. Got back from summer league, and I apologize for taking so long to get this up on the podcast, but it's the first episode, so it took a little while to get the kinks out and to get the equipment. So I'm excited to do it. Once the basketball season starts ramping up, October, November, we'll be hopefully doing this once a week, breaking down games, watching live games, maybe with some guests, and then, of course, just talking about everything and anything related to basketball. So this is episode 1. We're just getting started, but I'm excited, and buckle up. Let's dive in. All right, so first things first, I went out to NBA Summer League this summer in July out to Vegas. A buddy and I went out there, and I just wanted to get a lay of the land to see what it's all about. I'm definitely a bigger college hoops fan, but love the pro game, especially when it comes to playoff time. So I didn't really know what to expect. Wanted to see the Timberwolves, of course, in the NBA Summer League. Wanted just to be around the game. And, I got to tell you, this was a fantastic opportunity. If you are a basketball junkie like me, you got to get to the NBA Summer League because there's not very many opportunities where you get to be as close to the action, close to the players, the owners, coaches, college coaches walking in and out of those gyms. It was just a fantastic experience. So some of the things we'll talk about in today's show, we will talk about the Minnesota high school stars who were in action, some of the Timberwolves young core, of course. We'll talk about Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, takeaways that I had. One of them might surprise you. And then just like a look around the league in general, just some takeaways on roster construction, specifically looking at the Western Conference. And then lastly, just want to wrap up, talk about the fan experience at Summer League, what I thought, what I think you should do if you go, maybe some improvements they can make. But, just want to give a little bit of a review of my experience at NBA Summer League as a first timer. And let's get into it. Some of the Minnesota kids in action out at NBA Summer League: Curtis Jones from Cretin-Durham Hall. You had Jamison Battle, Dawson Garcia, some of the Big Ten players you'd maybe expect to be out there. A couple guys that I didn't really was familiar with, I guess, would be Gabe Madsen from Rochester. Stephen Crowell was there as well. And so, just from the limited time I saw these guys, Curtis Jones, he was undrafted, played for the Nuggets in Summer League. So he was going up against the Timberwolves the day we saw them. And actually, he's signed a two-way deal with the Nuggets. So he averaged 14.5 points a game. He shot it really well all Summer League, 46.7% from three, which if you saw him play at Iowa State, probably not a surprise. He's a decent size especially for a guy off the bench, 6'4". He can shoot, obviously. So, he looked really good from as far as the Minnesota kids that were there. Jamison Battle for the Raptors, he was okay. Like didn't do anything crazy, but he is kind of what he is, right? He's 6'7", can shoot it. He needs some space. I think the challenge for Jamison's going to probably be on the defensive end, getting his shot off. He's got to develop a little bit more to his game. Dawson Garcia, we saw actually in person playing for the Pistons summer league team. The game we saw, it was kind of the rugged defensive player that Dawson is probably going to have to be at the professional level, whether it's here or it's overseas. But he's a communicator on defense. He can hedge. He does pretty well in ball screens for a guy who's 6'11". Didn't have a ton of offensive opportunities, so we didn't get to see that in person. But watched him for a couple of years in the Big Ten, and was one of the Big Ten's probably more versatile big scorers in the league. So we know he can score when given an opportunity. Um, Gabe Matson, so he's from Rochester. He played Cincinnati, then he went out to Utah, finished out there with his brother, and he averaged 10 points a game during his 4 appearances this summer for the Warriors. He actually went and signed a Exhibit 10 contract, so he'll probably be, maybe a fringe G League player, but somebody who a little bit under the radar, at least for big names out of Minnesota. And then Stephen Crowell, he played on the Utah team. They had a strong summer league team playing behind Kyle Filipowski, former Duke player. So he played in 2 games, didn't do a lot. The athleticism might be a challenge for him in the NBA. But he can step out, he can shoot. He's I just don't know if he's quick enough to defend at the rim, and defensively there might be some challenges there for him. So those are a couple guys that stood out just locally for me. There was there's a case to be made that like Minnesota has some of the for per capita some of the best high school talent in the country. We don't always get a lot of love in Minnesota for our hoops, state of hockey, right? But I think a big part of that is the historical lack of success at the pro and college level. But the high school scene here is second to none per capita. I mean, we are putting guys in the league, high major level, tournament, NCAA. You look at Gonzaga with Suggs and Holmgren, and it's really fun to follow that. And so, I want to make sure that we keep giving a shout out to the local guys, local kids. And side note, if you haven't been to the Twin Cities Pro-Am throughout July and August, I would recommend that if you're in the Twin Cities area or can drive in. Super fun. I go every year with my son and maybe a buddy or two of his, and I got to tell you, it's just fun, right? It's free to get in. The kids have a blast. It's an hour, 2 hours, whatever. It goes quick, and you get to see some Big Ten level players. So Jack Nungy was there this year, which he played for Iowa and Xavier. Like that was just random guys like that. Jarvis Omersa still hanging around, looks athletic as ever. Gabe Kelcher was there, D'ing people up, shooting the Willingham brothers from Mankato State, which if you haven't seen them play, super fun, D2 level, but man, they are athletic, 6'5", 6'6" guys that can just get up and down the floor and shoot it. So Twin Cities Pro-Am, check it out if you haven't been there. All right, next I want to talk about the Timberwolves because that was one of the main reasons to go out to NBA Summer League this year was to check out the Timberwolves, see their new rookie Jean Beringer, and I still don't know if I'm saying that name right, but I'll get it. And then Terrence Shannon Jr., obviously he's an older guy, like I think he's 24, 25. He's definitely older than Ant. But I wanted to see Rob Dillingham in person, and I'll do, just starting out with Shannon. Super impressed. Like I think he's gonna step into Nickeil Alexander-Walker's role immediately. He will be that wing off the bench. He is a big, strong guy. Like you can see it on TV, but man, seeing him in person, he is built. His legs are thick. He's strong, and he goes end to end so fast. Just really excited to see what he can do. The game we saw against Denver, it was a Saturday night, super fun environment. Ant walks in, Reed walks in, a bunch of the Nuggets players are there, and Shannon was just, I mean, he was shooting it from 3. He was defending. He was getting out on the wing. He had some highlight dunks. I mean, he's just fantastic. So he was the 5th leading scorer in Summer League. Whatever, it's Summer League, but I think that's just a good sign for his development. For the Wolves, losing Alexander Walker, like getting a guy like him who can come off the bench provide a little punch. He actually brings something that not many on the Wolves, I'd say, have, which is like a downhill, get to the rim kind of scorer. Obviously, Ant is like that, but Ant is definitely moving more 3-point shooting. You know, he's one of the top guys in the league last year for volume and percentage. So Terrence Shannon, super impressed. Think he's going to have a huge role with the Wolves this year. The other guy I was interested to see was Rob Dillingham, because I think a lot of us are fascinated by him, but there are some challenges with Dillingham. You know, maybe he didn't get to play as much as we thought he should have last year. We just want to see more. We got to know what we got with him. And seeing him in person, I'm not going to lie, I kind of see where Chris Finch is coming from. He's hard to trust with the ball, especially in big moments. He struggled handling the ball at times in the game we saw. He averaged, a couple 4 turnovers a game, I think it was, which is not great at summer league. And then just defensively, I mean, he is small, right? So as big as Terrence Shannon looks, Dillingham looks just as small. Like, he is a little guy out there, very quick hands. So if he's going to be a defensive player, he's going to have to use his hands. But I just think like a little bit on his efficiency on offense isn't great for his scoring. His turnovers are high, and he got beat to the bucket a few times by guys who will not be on NBA rosters or won't be asked to play much if they are. So that's concerning for me. I would love to see the Wolves still add some other ball handler besides Mike Conley. I think it's a lot to ask Ant to bring the ball up and be their primary scorer. So we'll see where that shakes out, but a little concerned about Rob Dillingham. The other guy, obviously, that was super exciting to watch was Jean Beringer. So he's the Frenchman, the Wolves drafted, young guy, getting a lot of Rudy Gobert comparisons, and I think rightly so. He's not quite as tall as Gobert, but I'd say his offensive skill and his hands are better than Gobert's are right now. Like, he shot 70% from the free throw line. He just looks more comfortable there today at his age than Gobert does right now at 32, 33, whatever he is. So, I think as a Wolves fan, that's exciting to have kind of that future shot blocker on the back end to replace Gobert. I don't know that he's not there yet. Maybe he will be later in the year. He looks pretty good. He probably needs to I don't know, just like maybe be a little bit more athletic, maybe like get a little faster, better in shape. I don't know what it was. Kind of lumbered a little bit, in my opinion, from watching him, but he's definitely going to have an impact down the road. So all in all, Wolves, saw what you needed to see. They look good. They, shut down Shannon after a couple games. I think him, Dillingham, Jalen Clark will all have an impact. Beringer, we'll see. I think he probably will later in the season, but Finch hasn't always been the kind of coach who's going to throw in rookies if he really doesn't see huge impacts right away. So we'll see how much he contributes this year. But all in all, it's fun to see the Wolves. Like I said, great environment. Gym was full. They played in the side gym, the Cox Pavilion out there on the campus of UNLV. And it was packed for that game. It was actually super fun sitting in. We got to, it's general admission outside of the first 2 rows. So if you haven't been out there, it's a great opportunity to bring your kid and get them close to the action. So we were sitting kind of behind Terrence Shannon Jr.'s little entourage, a bunch of his buddies, it looked like, going nuts, and then sort of behind a bunch of Denver Nuggets players who would take the time maybe at halftime or before or after the game to sign some autographs. Just a really fun experience. And like I said, when Ant walks in the gym, everybody notices. So super cool experience. Glad we got to see the Wolves face off against the Nuggets at NBA Summer League. And now I want to talk a little bit about the Cooper Flagg Dylan Harper matchup that we saw out at NBA Summer League. This was kind of the marquee matchup, but it was in the middle of the day on Saturday. It was like 2:00 start. We did get to see Ted Lasso himself. Jason Sudeikis was there. There was a bunch of celebrities in the house for that game. That was played at the Thomas and Mack Center. Holds about 18,000. I would say maybe there was 10,000 in there for that one, but either way, it was fun. Definitely hyped up. A lot of excitement around that. Flagg's probably the biggest star since Wemby to come into the league, or so they say. But this is kind of like, the top two picks going head to head. So, as much as they didn't really guard each other, it was still, a showcase for those two. My takeaways from this, though, and I'll be honest, like as a Duke fan, I've watched Cooper Flagg play a lot this year. He is an unbelievable scorer. I have some question marks as the top overall pick. This isn't like a hot take podcast. I just talk about what I see, and I'm a little nervous. He is not the most efficient scorer in as a rookie. This was his second game, so he kind of had that warm up game where you say, all right, he had a game, got out the kinks, a little rusty, maybe a little bit nervous, but this was game two. And overall for Summer League, he only shot 35% and 21% from three. So that's not good, to say the least. I also was curious about how they used him. So he was bringing the ball up a lot, and I don't think he'll be doing that for the Mavericks. I'm guessing they just want to showcase his ball handling skills, but it looked to me like he got worn out and didn't have the juice in the half court, and he didn't have his legs, which may be an issue because his toughest moments of the season last year at Duke were end of games, pressure's on, bunch of turnovers against Kentucky at the end. He misses the shot against Houston in the Final Four. Whatever. Super young kid. I'm not taking any of that away. I'm just saying that from, when you're the top overall pick and you've got this hype, there's kind of some expectations. And I think he'll be a good player, but from what I've seen, I don't know that he's definitely not going to be in the Wemby conversation. But, I think some of the challenges for him are in college, he was bigger than he was quicker than fours and fives. So he could go around them. He can play off the dribble, and he was bigger than threes that tried to guard him. So he could post them up and shoot over. But those advantages aren't there anymore in the NBA. There's going to be 6-8 guys that can stay with him that are just and more physical. And so I'm curious how he's going to adapt his game. When the Mavs get Kyrie back and they get Anthony Davis and they're healthy, he can fit in and be the third fiddle, and he'd probably be great, right? He'll be great at that, being able to catch and shoot, maybe get some space, play off the ball more. But from what I saw in a couple of NBA Summer League games and some of the tougher opponents that Duke played last year, I'm interested to see how he performs at the NBA level. Now, on the other side of the coin, Dylan Harper. I thought Dylan Harper looked fantastic. I mean, he has a lot of defensive intensity. Now, his shooting numbers and efficiency weren't much better. Actually, they were almost the same as Cooper Flagg. He just took way fewer attempts. But he looks comfortable in his role and his position. He's got good size. He was the number 2 pick for a reason. He's talented. But what stood out to me was his defensive intensity and the leadership that he brought to that team. You could tell that the other guys fed off of it. He was intense. He was leading the charge. He was on the ball. He was making plays with his defense. On the other side, Flagg, I thought, looked a little bit disjointed defensively. Like he got beat twice on back cuts, just not knowing where his man was, not paying attention, whatever it was. So there's a little bit of that too. And I think Dylan Harper knows who he is. He doesn't necessarily beat you just by his size, and being able to play like positionless basketball like Flagg did in college a little bit. But, I think Harper next to Stephon Castle and Wemby has a chance. I mean, that's a really exciting young core for San Antonio. So if I'm a Spurs fan, man, I am jacked for that, because I think those three are really good players. And then, they got some other nice pieces around too. But if there was a team in the West that I'm thinking is making a jump this year, if they can stay healthy, it might be the Spurs into that 7-8 play-in spot. Another guy actually on the Spurs that really impressed me, and I had to look it up because I didn't really know anything about him, was David Jones-Garcia. He looked like the best player on the court that game when the Spurs and the Mavs played in that Summer League game. He averaged 21.6 points a game, shot 52% from field goal and from three in Summer League. six rebounds a game for a guard. I mean, he was good. Like I would expect him to make a roster spot for sure. He did have a few too many turnovers, but like just from standout summer league guys, he is definitely one of them. Actually, another guy that stood out to me was Kyle Filipowski, and I think he led the summer league in points per game. He averaged 29 points a game, shot it really high, 56%, almost 40% from three. And, when he came out of Duke, I actually thought he would be pretty good in the NBA just because he's 6'10, 6'11, can shoot. He's a little like a slower, bulkier version of Cooper Flagg without the handles, probably. But it might have just taken him a couple of years to get there. And he might be reaching his potential because he did look good and had some really strong moments. Another player, highly touted college player, Walter Clayton Jr. off the national championship at Florida. He looks confident. He looks good. He's going to be a really nice player, I think. He played in one game and looked as comfortable as he ever did at Florida. I mean, this guy makes shots at a high level. He knows who he is. He takes good shots. Even if we look at him, it's one of those no, yes type shots. Like that's Walter Clayton Jr. Really excited to see what he does in throughout the NBA and his career because loved watching him in college. Great college player. Sometimes it doesn't translate, but man, if there's one thing, like as a parent, Steph Curry has shown a lot of kids these crazy shots, and everyone wants to shoot threes. But man, bringing shooting and elevating shooting. I mean, at the end of the day, the game of basketball is about putting the ball in the hoop and stopping the other team from doing that. And Walter Clayton can put the ball in the basket. No doubt about it. All right, let's move around now to some other league-wide NBA things from Summer League and beyond. One thing I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about the Timberwolves was they played the Nuggets. And I think, just flying a little bit under the radar because obviously OKC gets a lot of headlines and rightfully so. And then you got the Lakers. Of course, they're going to dominate headlines. And the Mavericks, right, with Cooper Flagg. And Houston trading for Kevin Durant. I think the Denver Nuggets are the team most poised to take down Oklahoma City this year, and here's why. They added Cam Johnson, length and shooting. Tim Hardaway, length and shooting. Bruce Brown, more wing defense. And Jonas Valanciunas to give Joker some time off, right? So when the big thing with the Nuggets in the last couple of years has been when Joker's off the court, they struggle big time, right? Like that's when these other teams feast. Joker might come out of the game, they're up 5. He comes back in, they're down 5. There's huge swings like that, and it's tough because there's so much reliance on Nikola Jokic. Well, now you bring in Valanciunas, and you have a backup who can at least hold his own. He can rebound. He can finish around the hoop. He's a perfect complement to Jokic. So Denver, they pushed the Thunder as far as anybody outside of the Pacers, and they're going to have their core back. They got rid of Michael Porter Jr., probably addition by subtraction or addition by replacing him with Cam Johnson and Tim Hardaway for sure. And so Jamal Murray, they're going to be tough. Absolutely. To me, they are the second best team in the West. Houston adding Durant helps them, but I don't think that pushes Houston into that next category by any means. I still have it Thunder and then Nuggets. And from there it's Houston, it's Minnesota, and it's probably the Lakers in there, especially with Luka losing like 50 pounds or whatever he did. He looks insane. So I definitely think the West is going to be extremely competitive. The Thunder re-signed all their main guys. They're going to be incredibly tough to beat until proven otherwise. But man, I love those top 4, 5, 6 teams in the West. I think it's going to be a dogfight. And like I said earlier, you're going to have teams like San Antonio sneaking up, working those, 7, 8, maybe in the 6th spot in the West because they've improved so much. And Dallas will be in there if Dallas can get those other guys healthy. They can get 65 games out of Anthony Davis. If they can get whatever they can get out of Kyrie coming off injury, maybe down the stretch if they can be close. They have a chance. So there's a lot of excitement in the West. The West is going to be absolutely loaded, and I can't wait to see how it shakes out. All right, I want to finish with just the overall fan experience at Summer League. Like I said, went to Summer League, took a while to get this episode out, but it's finally out. But I just want to provide like my observations of Summer League, because I know people are like, "Oh, really? Like Summer League? What is that? Is it even fun? Is it what do you do out there?" And as a basketball junkie, it is awesome. Like it was, the accessibility. It's affordable. We paid, I want to say something like $130 for 2 days, general admission, but you just sit there wherever you want. Like we sat in the Cox Pavilion where only the first 2 rows are reserved. So we were third row, almost center court during a bunch of games, which is awesome. Small gym, feels like it's basically a high school gym. And then we go over to the other Thomas and Mack Center to watch some of the other games, and it's more comfortable. You have more room, you have space, you can spread out. Put your arms up a little bit and relax. So for 2 days, $130 and get that experience. Be that close to some of the coaches, Jim Boeheim. We saw Chris Finch and Mark Laurie, Alex Rodriguez walk literally right in front of us. So again, if you have kids that love basketball, bring them out. It's very affordable. It's close. It's family friendly. They had things going on in the concourse, obviously giving away t-shirts and merch, things like that. They also have Pop-A-Shot. They had other, games to play for kids. You could measure yourself against Wemby's reach, things like that. So it was fun. Definitely could have improved the concessions. The food is pretty subpar, but I don't know what you expect at a basketball arena. I know at Target Center we're kind of lucky. I think some of the food options are pretty good there. So that was, I'd say, one of the downsides at Summer League was just kind of the concessions. The other thing is, it would probably be a little bit better if they had a little more space. Um, in that second gym. Those things got packed really fast. There were some big lines to get in. Team people would be coming and going, like, hey, so and so's playing next, so there's a line out the door and you had to wait. So some of that kind of got annoying, but it wasn't awful. So there's some things there. It's going to continue to grow. Like I could totally see it being at T-Mobile someday, or playing somewhere else at some of these bigger arenas. But all in all, great experience. Definitely would do it again. Definitely would recommend it. We stayed on the strip, just got cab rides over there. It was, maybe $15-20, pretty easy. And just had a great time and watched some basketball. We, Saturday or Friday, I think we were there from like noon to 7. And then Saturday it was like noon to 9 and just watched hoops. So if you're a junkie like me, it's great. It kind of reminds me of like a training camp, but you get to see all the teams and all the players. And just kind of watch some of the young guys. For me, being bigger college fan, being able to see guys I watched in college, a lot of times their coaches were there, and just kind of seeing them, play. Like Kenny Lofton was there from he played for the Celtics, like big fan favorite, so he got a lot of love. And then Yuki Kawamura was there. He played with Memphis last year. He was on the Bulls this year. Just super fun. Like, you can see the fans getting behind certain guys, and just, knowing guys that are like, hey, this is my chance. I have to show up and I have to perform and I have to do what I have to do to get on this roster. It's just fun to see that level of competitiveness. And yeah, it's a great experience. So all in all, would highly recommend. Go back, check out Summer League. No one's paying me for that either, by the way. It's just my advice. But if you're a hoops junkie, take advantage of it. All right, let's wrap up. This is episode 1 of the Splash City Basketball Podcast. And so we covered a lot of things. We covered NBA Summer League primarily, a little bit of look at the NBA and the Western Conference, especially with some of the realignment. We talked about the Timberwolves and some of the local Twin Cities area players who were out at NBA Summer League. Episode 2, excited to talk about Gopher basketball. They've got a whole bunch of transfers. They got a new coach, of course. Nico Medved is welcomed into Dinkytown. Welcome back into Dinkytown. And, it's going to be an interesting year over there. Ben Johnson was a local guy, De La Salle guy who had coached for a few years and, just couldn't really get the program going. And, it's kind of been the case for quite a few of the past coaches. So it'll be interesting to see what Nico Medved brings to the table. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about what he's done, why he's here, what we think he'll probably do with this year's team, like how that roster is going to look, and then like just set some expectations for that. And then we'll also take a look at like some new recruiting news. Nico got a couple of verbal commitments from local Twin Cities players, and just talk about recruiting in the Big Ten, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And we'll see where else everything goes. Oh, one final thing. We'll talk about Minnesota Lynx and Cheryl Reeves' legacy as one of the all-time great coaches in the WNBA. So make sure you stick around. Episode 2, watch for it soon. Thank you for joining. This is the Splash City Basketball Podcast.
Back in that bag again. Whoa, yeah. Hey. Back in that, yeah. Tell them to watch it. Now I ain't talking my pockets. Just